folks, welcome to my channel. Today's topic is sacred mind wave. Right now, as you focus on these words, your brain is generating electrical activity that creates waves, measurable frequencies that determine your state of consciousness, your emotional experience, and literally what you can perceive and create in your reality. These are not metamorphical waves. These are actual oscillations of electrical energy moving through your neural networks, and they are broadcasting a signal into the field that surrounds you and connects you to everything. What if you discovered that you have been broadcasting the wrong frequency your entire life, that the wave pattern your brain habitually generates has been tuned to limitation, struggle, and survival rather than expansion, possibility, and creation? And what if you learned that by consciously changing your brainwave patterns, you could literally tune into a sacred frequency, a wave of consciousness that connects you to infinite intelligence, profound healing, and the exact life you're meant to live? This is a sacred mind wave, the optimal frequency of consciousness where your human biology meets divine intelligence, where your neuroscience meets spirituality, where your personal meets and especially the personal power meets universal power. Research in neuroscience, quantum physics, and consciousness studies has now revealed what mystics have always known. There's a frequency of consciousness that transforms everything. When you learn to generate and sustain this frequency, you become a completely different person with access to capabilities that seems miraculous but are actually the natural expression of consciousness operating at its highest level. Today, you will discover the exact science of brainwave frequency, how they shape your reality, and most importantly, how to deliberately tune your consciousness to the sacred mind wave that changes your biology, revives your brain, and attracts the experiences you truly desire. This is not wishful thinking or positive affirmation. This is hardcore neuroscience combined with the spiritual technology that the greatest beings throughout history have used to transcend limitation and become supernatural. The sacred mind wave is calling you right now. The question is whether you are ready to change your frequency and tune into the most powerful signal your consciousness can generate. Now, let us understand the science of brainwave frequency. To master the sacred mind wave, you must first understand how your consciousness operates through measurable frequencies. Your brain is essentially an electrical organ, and like an electrical system, it generates waves of energy at specific frequencies. These brainwave patterns determine everything about your experience, what you can think, how you feel, what you perceive, and what you can create. Let's break down the primary brainwave states, because understanding this frequency is like understanding the different gears in a high performance vehicle. Each frequency serves a specific function, and mastery means knowing which gear to use for which terrain. Beta waves oscillating between 30 and 30 cycles per second dominate normal waking consciousness. When you're in beta, you're analytical, focused on your external environment, aware of your body and time, problem solving, and often stress. This is survival consciousness. Your brain scanning for threats, your body producing stress hormones, your awareness contracted into narrow focus. Most people spend their entire waking life trapped in beta, never realizing there are other gears available. Alpha waves between 7 and 12 cycles per second emerge when you close your eyes, relax, and shift from external to internal awareness. In alpha, stress decreases, creativity increases, you begin to access the subconscious mind. This is the bridge state, the gateway between your conscious thinking mind and deeper levels of consciousness. Athletes often enter alpha during peak performance. Artists accessed alpha during creative flow. You naturally drop into alpha just before sleep. Theta waves between 4 and 7 cycles per second appear during deep meditation, light sleep, and profound relaxation. This is where magic happens neurologically. In theta, you access a subconscious programming that runs 95% of your life. Memory stored in theta, beliefs formed in theta, emotional patterns encoded in theta. When you can consciously enter theta while remaining aware, you can access to rewire the operating system that has been running your life unconsciously. Delta waves between 0.5 and 3 cycles per second emerge in deep sleep and deepest state of meditation. Delta is where your body heals, where growth hormone releases, where you connect to universal consciousness. Advanced meditators can access delta while maintaining awareness, and in this state, they report experiences of unity, profound peace, and connection to something far greater than their individual self. But here is what most people never learn. There are another frequency that neuroscience has only recently begun to understand. Gamma waves oscillating between 30 and 100 cycles per second. Gamma represents the highest level of brain activity associated with peak focus, heightened perception, expanded consciousness, and what researchers call transcendent experiences. When your brain produces gamma waves, something extraordinary happens. Different brain regions that normally operate independently begin to synchronize. Your frontal lobe, responsible for attention and intention, coordinates with your parietal lobe, responsible for spatial awareness. Your limbic brain, grounding emotions, harmonizes with your neocortex, governing higher thought. This is called whole brain coherence, and it represents consciousness operating at its absolute peak. Research on advanced meditators shows that they can generate sustained gamma wave activity. Brain scans of monks during loving kindness meditation reveals Gamma patterns never seen in ordinary consciousness. Studies of people reporting mystical experiences shows gamma signatures that correlate with feeling of unity, timelessness, and profound meaning. The sacred mind wave is this gamma frequency combined with coherence across all brain wave states. Your brain operating like a symphony where every instrument plays in perfect harmony. When you achieve this state, you are no longer limited by your habitual personality. You transcend your past programming. You access dimensions of consciousness that contain information, creativity, and healing beyond anything available in ordinary awareness. This is not theoretical, this is measurable. And most importantly, this is trainable. You can learn to deliberately generate the secret mind wave through specific practices that rewire your brain and retune your consciousness to this optimal frequency. Breaking the survival frequency. Now that you understand the frequency, you must address the fundamental problem. Most people are trapped in survival frequency. Beta brainwaves dominated by stress, fear, and limitation. Your brain has been conditioned through repeated experience to default to this frequency, and until you break free from survival mode, the sacred mind wave remains inaccessible. Here is how the trap works. When you wake up in the morning and immediately start thinking about your problems, your debt, your health issues, your relationship conflicts, you activate natural networks associated with stress. Your brain releases hormones that signal your body into survival mode. Adrenaline and cortisol flood your system. Your heart rate increases, your focus narrows, you are now broadcasting a survival frequency. Throughout the day, every time you check your phone expecting bad news, every time you worry about your future or regret the past, every time you feel anxious or frustrated, you strengthen this survival frequency. Your brain and body become conditioned to this state. Neural pathways associated with stress become highways. Receptive sites on your cells become addicted to stress chemistry. Neuroscience calls this self-directed neuroplasticity, but in the negative direction, you are wiring and firing the same neural circuits day after day, creating a brain and body that is literally addicted to survival emotions. And here is the devastating consequences. When you live in survival mode, you can't create. You're focused on protecting what you have rather than expanding into possibility. You're reacting to your environment rather than creating your future. The stress chemicals that dominate survival frequency also have another effect. Because your brainwave patterns to remain stuck in high beta, anxious, worried, hypervigilant beta, you cannot access the slower, more creative brainwave states. The doorway to the sacred mind wave remains closed because your biology is locked in survival. Breaking free requires what the legendary speaker calls a pattern interrupt, consciously disrupting the unconscious loop that keeps you trapped. This is not about positive thinking or simply trying to relax. This is about using specific techniques to shift your physiology, which then shifts your psychology, which then changes your brainwave frequency. The first technique is breath. Your breath is a bridge between your conscious and unconscious nervous system. When you're stressed, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. When you deliberately slow your breath, breathing in for 6 counts, holding for 4, exhaling for 8, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. You signal your brain to move out of survival mode. Within minutes, measurable changes occurs. Stress hormones decrease, alpha wave increase, you begin to shift frequency. The second technique is changing your physiology through movement. When you're depressed, your physiology reflects it. Slumped shoulders, shallow breathing, downward gaze. But research shows that if you forcibly change your physiology, standing tall, breathing deeply, moving with energy, your brain chemistry changes with seconds. You can't maintain a stress mental state when your body is expressing confidence and vitality. The third technique is the most powerful meditation that trains your brain to operate in slower, more coherent wave states. This is not passive relaxation. This is active reconditioning of your nervous system. You're literally teaching your brain that safety, creativity, and possibility are your natural state, not survival, stress, and fear. When you practice this consistently, interrupting survival patterns through breath, movement, and meditation, something remarkable happens. The neural networks associated with stress begin to prune away from lack of use. New networks associated with elevated states strengthen. Your brain literally rewires itself to default to higher frequencies rather than survival frequencies. This is the essential first step to accessing the sacred mind wave. You must break the biological addiction to survival emotions. You must retrain your nervous system to operate from elevated states. You must refuse to return to the familiar but limited frequency that have kept you trapped. And when you make this non-negotiable commitment, when you raise your standards and decide you will no longer tolerate living in survival mode, your entire biology begins to shift towards the sacred frequency. Now let us contemplate the tuning into the sacred frequency. Once you have broken free from survival frequency, you can begin the practice of deliberately tuning into the sacred mind wave, the optimal frequency where human consciousness meets divine intelligence. This is not something that happens to you. This is something you consciously create through specific techniques that synchronize your brain, heart, and energy field into coherent unity. The sacred mind wave practice has 3 essential phases, each building into the previous to create the conditions for transcendent consciousness. Phase 1 is becoming pure consciousness, moving beyond your body, your environment, and time. You close your eyes and begin expanding your awareness beyond physical boundaries. Rather than focusing on the sensations in your body, you focus on the space around your body. Rather than being aware of the sounds and environment, you become absorbed in internal experience. Brain imaging shows that when you do this successfully, regions that create your sense of separate self begins to quiet. The parental lobe, which defines where your end and the rest of the world begins, decreases activity. You begin to feel less like a separate entity and more like consciousness itself. This is the neurological basis of unity experiences reported by mystics. It's not physical or metaphysical fantasy, but actual changes in brain function. As you sustain this state, your brain waves naturally slow from beta into alpha, then deeper into theta. You are now in the optimal state for creating change. Your analytical mind has released its grip. The doorway to the subconscious has opened. You're suggestible to new information. This is why hypnotherapy works in theta states. This is why learning accelerates in theta. This is why transformation happens in theta. You can access and reprogram the operating system. Phase 2 is generating elevated emotion. This is critical and where most people fail in meditation. They become relaxed and peaceful, which is valuable, but it does not create transformation. Transformation requires energy. You must generate emotions that are greater than your survival emotions. Gratitude, love, joy, inspiration, awe. When you cultivate these elevated emotions, while in theta brain wave states, you create a powerful electromagnetic signal. Your heart produces coherent rhythms that entry your entire nervous system. Research from the Art Math Institute shows that a coherent heart patterns create measurable changes in the electromagnetic field around your body, extending up to 15 feet in all directions. This coherent field is a sacred mind wave in action. You're now broadcasting a frequency that is radically different from survival mode. You're signaling the quantum field with elevated consciousness rather than limited consciousness, and the field which is responsive to the frequency you broadcast begins to respond with experiences that match your new signal. Phase 3 is clear intention combined with this elevated state. While you're in theta brain waves, feeling elevated emotions, generating coherent heart rhythms, you introduce a clear vision of the future you intend to create, not somebody or someday fantasy, but vivid present moment experience of your desired reality. You see it, hear it, feel it with such sensory richness that your brain cannot distinguish between actual experience and imagined experience. Neurons fire and wire in patterns matching your vision. Your body releases chemistry matching the emotions of your desired future. Genetically, you are signal new proteins that change your biology to match the person you are becoming. This is not visualization as typically taught. This is neurological installation of a new reality while in the optimal brainwave state powered by coherent electromagnetic fields sustained through elevated emotions. When done correctly, you are literally becoming your future self biologically before it manifests. Physical research and mental rehearsal shows one session creates measurable changes, but a sacred mind wave practice requires consistency. 20 minutes daily for minimum 30 days to create new neural pathways, 60 to 90 days to prune away old patterns and establish new ones. This is the practice that separates those who transform from those who remain stuck. When you commit to this practice, become pure consciousness, generating elevated emotions, holding clear intention, your brain begins operating at the sacred frequency consistently. You don't just access it during meditation, it becomes your baseline state. You live in gamma coherence, accessing genius level creativity, and inside you operate from elevated emotions regardless of circumstances. You remain connected to infinite intelligence even in the midst of daily challenges. This is mastery of the sacred mind wave. This is the consciousness that has learned to maintain its optimal frequency despite external conditions. This is how you become supernatural while by living in the natural world. Now let us contemplate the broadcasting your new frequency. Accessing the sacred mind wave during meditation is profound, but the ultimate mastery is sustaining this frequency in your daily life. This is where meditation meets application, where consciousness becomes action, where internal transformation radiates outward to transform your entire reality. You must learn to maintain your new frequency despite the old triggers, environments, and relationships that want to pull you back to familiar patterns. When you establish a sacred mind wave as your baseline frequency to consistent practice, your external reality begins to reorganize itself to match your internal state. This is not magic, this is a natural consequence of changing the electromagnetic signal you broadcast. Remember, you're radiating energy and information through your brain and heart fields. When you change the quality of the signal, you change what you attract and create. Synchronicity accelerates. The perfect person appears at the perfect time. Opportunities align that you could not have predicted or planned. Resources flow towards you. Problems solve themselves. This is a quantum field responding to your coherent signal. When your frequency changes, your reality must change to match it. But sustaining your new frequency requires vigilance, especially in the beginning. Your old environment, the same job, the same relationship, the same routines, all of these carry the energy signatures of your old self. When you walk into your workplace, your brain recognizes the environmental cues and wants to activate the neural networks associated with that environment. You must consciously maintain your new frequency despite external triggers. This is where legendary speaker Tony Robbins' concept of state management becomes crucial. You cannot wait for external circumstances to change before you feel elevated. You must maintain elevated emotions and coherent frequency regardless of what's happening around you. When someone pushes your button, you maintain your center. When unexpected challenges arise, you stay in possibility rather than fear. When old patterns try to reassert, you change and also choose the new frequency. The practice is moment to moment awareness throughout your day. You check in with yourself. What frequency am I broadcasting right now? Am I in survival mode or creation mode? Am I contracted in fear or expanded in possibility? When you notice you have dropped into survival frequency, you pause, breathe, and consciously return to the sacred mind wave. This requires what might be called frequency discipline, the commitment to maintain your optimal state no matter what. It means choosing your internal state rather than letting external circumstances dictate it. It means being the cause of your experiences rather than the effect of conditions. Research on neuroplasticity shows that new patterns require consistent reinforcement to become permanent. Every time you choose the new frequency over the old, you strengthen new neural pathways. Every time you maintain elevated emotions when circumstances suggest you should feel stress, you condition your nervous system to operate from a higher set point. Within weeks, the new frequency becomes automatic. Within months, it becomes your permanent operating system. But broadcasting the sacred mind wave has effects beyond your personal transformation. Your coherent electromagnetic field affects everyone around you. When you maintain elevated frequency, other nervous system begins to enter into yours. You become what researchers call a coherence generator, with someone whose presence elevates the consciousness and the frequency of everyone they encounter. This is leadership at the deepest level, not through authority or persuasion, but through the frequency you broadcast. But people feel different around you. Situations resolve more easily in your presence. Your very energy field creates possibility for others to access their own sacred frequency. This is the ultimate expression of the sacred mind wave, becoming a living transformation of transmission of elevated consciousness. Your life becomes evidence that transformation is real. Your results demonstrate what becomes possible at a higher frequency. Your presence invites others to remember their own capacity for transcendence. Now, let us deeply understand choosing your frequency now. As we complete this exploration, you stand at a decision point that will determine the trajectory of your entire life. You now understand the science of brainwave frequencies. You now know that survival mode keeps you trapped in limited beta frequencies while the sacred mind wave operates in coherent gamma. You have learned the exact practices that shift your frequency. The only question is whether you will commit to doing the work. The sacred mind wave is not a gift reserved for special people. It is your natural state. When you learn to operate your nervous system correctly, every human brain has the capacity to generate gamma coherence. Every human heart can produce elevated emotions. Every person can access the frequency where human consciousness meets divine intelligence. This is your birthright. The only barrier is your unwillingness to break the addiction to survival frequency. This requires non-negotiable commitment. You must decide right now that you will no longer tolerate operating at survival frequency, that you will practice the sacred mind wave meditation daily, that you will maintain elevated emotions regardless of circumstances, that you will broadcast the new frequency with absolute consistency until it becomes permanent. This is not easy, especially at first. Your body will crave familiar survival chemistry. Your mind will resist the unfamiliar. Your environment will try to pull you back. But if you persist, if you maintain discipline through your discomfort, you will break through to the other side where the sacred mind wave becomes effortless. You have the neuroscience, you have the technique, you have the understanding. Now you must have the commitment. Will you spend the next 30 days practicing the sacred mind wave meditation every morning? Will you catch yourself dropping into survival mode and consciously return to elevated frequency? Or will you maintain coherence regardless of external circumstances? Tune into the sacred frequency. Your brain is waiting to be retrained to optimal patterns, broadcast elevated emotions consistently. Your heart is ready to generate coherent electromagnetic fields, become the living transmission of divine consciousness. The universe is responding to whatever frequency you choose to generate. The sacred mind wave is calling you right now, inviting you to transcend survival and become supernatural. What frequency will you choose? What will you broadcast? Who will you become when you finally tune into the optimal frequency your consciousness is capable of generating? Thank you so much for watching this video. See you in the next video.